Okay, we are in middle of Paragraph test. We are on page 72. At the bottom, it's 128. The bottom, it's 128, and the top, it's page 72. Okay, we are in the middle of the page. We are left off in the middle of something. What Al Rebbe started saying in Paragraph test is, what happens? You try all these things, you try to meditate, you realize that Hashem is great, but your heart's not becoming affected by it. He quotes the Zohar that says if it's a thick piece of wood, you got to break it. If you want the fire to catch on to the wood, if it's too thick, it's not going to catch on. You need to bust it. So he says, what is the busting? He said a person needs to start meditating in how bad he is. Okay? That the nefesh habamis, the animal soul, is what's controlling me. And that's what's giving me life. And I'm not only that, when I sin, I'm worse than the thing that I'm sinning with. If I eat non-kosher food, the Alter Rebbe says, you're worse than the pig you're eating. The pig was created as evil, but it was created as evil. You chose to do evil. You're even worse. You're even worse than the pig itself. And he says, and especially he says, when you realize the sins of your youth and how much you sin, and it's very difficult to do tshuva. And he says like this. We're going to start in the middle of the page. He says, and even if the guy did tshuva, he was saying before, okay, you know, we'll start in the middle of the page. He says, also tshuva, even though the person already did proper tshuva. So what do you mean he remembers the sin of his youth or the sins he did? He did tshuva. They're not existing anymore. Are they iker hatshuva belev? Al Rebbe says it's still a problem. Why? Because the main aspect of tshuva is in the heart. The heart has many, many different levels. I'm going to explain in a second. Everything depends on who the person is, and the place you sin and the time you sin, as the Kabbalists know. So even, in other words, a guy sinned, he did tshuva. But now he sees the fire of the neshama is not catching on to his body. The question is, if the guy did tshuva, why isn't it catching on? So the Alter Rebbe says, therefore, you should realize, Achshav b'shazu, now at this time, Sharaya ba'atzmi, that the person sees by himself, Leisalig bein the the nishmasa, that the fire of the neshama is not catching on today. He says, Mechlal, Shahayem le niskablu tshuvasi. Today, they didn't accept yesterday's tshuva. I'll explain in a second. Vavenesav mavdilim, or the sins are separating. And he says, or, let me read this and I'll explain the whole thing. You know why Hashem's not accepting your tshuva today? Because he wants you to do a greater level of tshuva. He wants to beg more. You know, you ask somebody for something, they don't want to give it to you. So what do? You beg more. Sometimes Hashem wants that we should beg him more. And I'll explain why in a second. From a deeper place in the heart. And therefore, David HaMelech said, Chatasi negdi samit. David HaMelech said, my sin is forever before me. It's always in my way. What does this mean? Let me explain what Alter Rebbe is saying over here. We started talking about it last week, but we didn't finish because time was up. You can take a garment that has a stain. You bring it to the cleaners, or you wash it, and the stain is clean. Now you take a magnifying glass and you look at it, you'll still see a little stain. You take a microscope, you'll see a little stain. Clean that stain off. Take a stronger microscope, you'll still see a stain. Then you clean it off, take a stronger microscope, and you're still going to see a stain. Meaning like this. Dr. Rebbe says, every day a person becomes greater. Every day a person is supposed to become older, smarter, better, so on and so on. If a person sinned, and I did tshuva yesterday, that was good for yesterday. Today, I need to do another tshuva. Because now I'm on a greater level. I'm older. I'm on supposed to be on a greater level than yesterday. If I'm supposed to be on a greater level of yesterday, then yesterday's tshuva is not good for today. Or the Alter Rebbe says, Hashem wants you to do a greater tshuva. Hashem wants you to beg, not to beg. Beg was a funny expression. Hashem wants you to ask forgiveness more, to reach a higher level. Why? Not because Hashem likes when we beg him. Not that Chas v'Shalom, Hashem doesn't have an ego that we need to feed. What Hashem is saying is, the concept over here is, Hashem wants us to become closer. And therefore, Hashem will make a blockage, a challenge like we learned a million times. Hashem will create challenges and blockages because he wants us to overcome them and reach a greater level. Hashem says, yesterday, so Dr. Rebbe is saying like this, he's speaking, our person should break himself. So he says, think about the sins of your youth. And even if you did tshuva, okay, that's good when you were young, but now you're older. So that tshuva is not going to help you. You need to reach a higher level. Or Hashem is doing it special that you should reach a higher level. Why? Because Hashem wants us to become greater. So therefore Hashem denies, blocks the accessibility to him like a dam. You have water and you have a dam. The dam blocks the water. Then when the water breaks through the dam, the water is much more powerful. You create electricity, you can create whatever. Hashem says, I want you to become greater. Yesterday's tshuva wasn't good. I want you to reach a higher level of tshuva. And that's what David HaMelech said. I'll never concluded this point. David HaMelech said, Chatosin nagdi samin, my sins are always opposite to me. David HaMelech did tshuva. David HaMelech was a tzaddik of Tanya. He didn't have any Yetzer Hara whatsoever. Now that he transformed it to Kedusha. It's interesting. In the first parak of Tanya, the Alter Rebbe brought down that the definition of a tzaddik is he kills his Yetzer Hara. Okay? So it says, Shedema, V'libi cholul b'kibri, my heart is hollow within me. David HaMelech said that in Tehillim. So seemingly, he only killed the Yetzer Hara. Avraham Avinu seemingly reached a higher level. Umatzasa as levavai neman lefanecha, levavai, two bases. Avraham Avinu was seemingly greater. Even both Yetzer Tov and Yetzer Hara, meaning the Yetzer Nefesh Abamis, became the Nefesh Sholakis, which, as Alter Rebbe explained before, is the Tzaddik Gomer. But the Rebbe said many, many times, this that David HaMelech said, Libi Cholu Bekibi, that he killed the Yetzer Hara, was at the beginning of his Avodah. There's no question that David HaMelech reached the level that his Nefesh Abamis was transformed to Kedusha. So there's no question that David HaMelech did tshuva. Why is David HaMelech saying Chatosin Nagdi Samid? Because David HaMelech, Alter Rebbe, is teaching us that he wants to reach a higher level. When you realize that now that I'm greater, the more, even a sin that's not so coarse, it's like refined, but it's still a sin, even though it's refined on his level, that's a problem. That's an issue. So this is what Alter Rebbe is saying over here, how to break yourself. Okay? So he says, number one, realize who's giving you life. realize how far we are distant away from Hashem. Okay, we will have desires, we have temptations. Our body is controlled by nefesh habamis. It's not good. And he says, especially, and then he says you're worse than the animals. And then he says, especially if you sinned in your youth. Now the Alter Rebbe says, what happens if you didn't have youthful sins? Even if you were clean from those youthful sins, Yosef Aliba, you have to put this, how it means realize, to fulfill what the Zohar Kodesh says, to be a person of reckoning, a master of accounting, meaning, Hainu. Listen to this. La says, and this is a very good way of realizing how low you are without getting depressed. It says like this. La says, cheshbon in nafshe, to be a man of, the Rebbe brings on in a Yemen, Chassidim always counted. They're always making a cheshbon, always reckoning where they are, where they should be, and everything like that. He says like this. La says, cheshbon in nafshe, to make a reckoning, Mikol machshavas diburim u'maisim. Sit down one day. I wish everybody luck doing this. Sit down and make a reckoning of kol machshavas diburim v'maisim asher lo laHashem heimol l'tzeinu l'avidasim. Make a reckoning. I mentioned this morning in Chassidus and Shul. There were Chassidim that were able to give a reckoning of every thought, speech, and action they had since Bar Mitzvah. Stop, I mentioned this morning in Chassidus. Stop a person in the street that's just walking, okay? And say, excuse me, can you tell me everything you thought in the last half hour? There's no way, unless they're concentrating on something. But if the mind is, and they're not talking on the phone, by the way, they're just walking in the street like a normal person, okay? Stop them and say, excuse me, sir, excuse me, man. Tell me what you thought in the last half hour. There is no way in the world they'll be able to do it. You know what that shows? That our mind is not controlling our thoughts. Now, the Rebbe is saying over here, okay, you're a clear tzaddik, you're a perfect person, great, you're holy, you don't even have youthful sins. He says, make a cheshbon of every thought, speech you had from the day, Shelei Hashem Heima, and not for the service of Hashem. Shezeu Loshin Pirush Loshin Sitra Achra. Sitra Achra means the other side. If it's not Kedusha, when we learned the Paragva, if it's not Kedusha, it's evil. Okay, if it's not for the service of Hashem, it's evil. Okay, and therefore he says like this, Umedas Zeis, it's known, he call Ace anytime. Sha'adam Mechashi Machshavas Kadeshis. Anytime a person thinks holy thoughts. And by the way, speaks holy words and does holy things. Nase Merkava B'Shas Zu Ve'izu Le'echol Sakdusha. Shemehem Mishporis Machshavas Alone. We learned already, the Alter Rebbe says this later on in Tanya. Yada Mechalik Tzedakah, when a hand is giving tzedakah. The mouth is speaking Torah, like the Alter Rebbe says here. You're thinking holy thoughts. At that moment, you are a merkava, meaning a chariot, completely subjugated and bottled to Hashem. You're nourishing from Kedusha. You think a holy thought, that moment you're not living from the Nefesh Habamis. You're living from the Nefesh Holokis. For that moment. The question, what happens afterwards? You speak, you give tzedakah, The moment you're giving tzedakah, you are merkava to chesed of atzilus. You are bottled to chesed of atzilus, the highest level of kindness. The others were a merkava. It says others saying the merkava. What does that mean? They were the merkava. They were bottled 24/7 for their entire life. Their entire life, they were bottled to Hashem. You could say Torah, and the next minute you could speak Lashon Hara. You could think a good thought, a minute later you could think a bad thought. You can give tzedakah and then hit somebody with the same hand. So he says, if you realize like this, when you think for kedusha, speak kedusha, you're bottled to kedusha. And he says, v'chein laheitvach. The same thing is in the opposite. Nase merkava tmeya. You at the time you think not only evil thoughts, not serving Hashem. You speak not serving Hashem. You do not serving Hashem, which is sitra achra, which is klipa, evil. Nase merkava tmeya beizule cholos hatuma. Shemehem mushpa, where from that evil comes all evils, bad thinkings, bad thoughts. And v'chein b'dibur ma'aseh, the same thing with speech and action. But Rabbi says like this. He's speaking again about the breaking system, breaking Aveda. The fire of the neshama is not catching onto your body, it's because it's too thick. You got to bust it up. Think how low you are, how far you away from Hashem, that your nourishment comes from the Shabbat. And then number one, you did sin. Even though you did tshuva, so you're still not good for today. And then realize that even if you're a tzaddik from birth, you never sinned, youthful sins. But every thought, speech, and action that you made, you could have been a merkava to evil. If you are bottled to evil, you are one with evil. How in the world do you expect the fire of the neshama to catch into you? It's impossible. You're bottled to evil. You can't be bottled to Hashem. It's a contradiction of terms. In order to have the fire of the neshama permeating the body, feeling it in the heart, you have to be bottled to kedusha. You have to be subjugated to kedusha. God only rests on things which are bottled. What happens though when you're bottled to evil? You're nourishing now from evil. How do you expect the fire of the neshama of godliness to permeate your body? You're going against it. You're now living from evil. How do you expect to live from kedusha? So he says, when you make that reckoning and you realize how bad it is, that will bust you up that you're not such a great person afterwards. You need to make a serious calculations. Like the Zohar says, to be Mara, the Shusterman, the owner of reckonings. Especially in the month of Elul, that's the whole month is the month of reckoning. Another thing, if you want to know about dreams, now the Alter Rebbe talks about dreams. Another thing you should place to your heart, meaning be aware of. Most of your dreams are hevel v'roes ruach. Your dreams are vanity, afflictions of the spirit. Why? Why do people dream crazy things? I'm not only talking about nightmares, but they dream crazy things. He says, let me explain it out and we'll see it. Now, the Rebbe says like this. Where do dreams come from? At night, when a person sleeps, the neshama goes up to Gan Eden. Sleep is a 60th of death. You sleep, your neshama goes up. So if you're a Talmud Chacham and a Tzaddik, okay, then it says in Svarim that if you learn diligently during the day and you go to sleep at night, your questions many times are answered. Most prophets, with the exception of Moshe Rabbeinu, got their nevuah at night. because the neshama leaves the body, the neshama is on a higher level, so therefore the neshama gets prophecy. Who can go up to Gan Eden? The pasuk says, he quotes the pasuk, Mi yale bahar Hashem. We said Yom Rishon b'Shabbos and Sundays Shir Shel Yom. Who is able to ascend? Neki kapayim b'Leva. You have to be clean hands, pure heart. What happens if you're not pure? So the Rebbe says what happens is like this. The neshama goes part up, partial way up. Evil connects to him, and they show you stupid things in the dream, or sometimes they even make fun of you in the dream. So he's saying if you don't have holy dreams, you know what that shows? That your neshama didn't go properly up to Gan Eden. So what's happening? The evil catches you along the way because you're not in Gan Eden. So now you're open to the public, so to speak. Let's see it inside. We'll start 4 lines from the top of the page. Another thing you should realize, Alter Rebbe says, most of your dreams, Shem Hevel v'Rois Ruach are basically empty and evil. Mishum shein nafshei eila l'mayla, because when you sleep, this person, the neshama doesn't go upward completely. Like it says, Mi yale bahar Hashem, who is able to go up to the mountain of Hashem, neki kapayim, clean hands, pure heart, and so on. But the inun sitrim bishin, but those originating from the evil side, Asyan, they come, and they cling to this neshama that can't go up because it's not pure enough. And they report to him in his dreams, mil in the alma, worldly things. And sometimes they laugh at him, they mock him. They show him false things and torment him in his dreams. And they torture him in the dreams. You know where nightmares come from? Nightmares come from what Alter Rebbe quotes now from the Zohar. It says, Ayin Shem, look in the Zohar. The Zohar says, you have a nightmare, it's because what happened is your neshama was not pure enough to go up to heaven. So it got stuck outside. The evil forces come and they have a field day with you. They make fun of you. They mock you. They make you torturous in your dreams. So he says, think about it. You ever had nightmares? You ever have not holy dreams? Where does that come from? It comes from evil. You're not pure. Don't make yourself as great as you think you are. Again, this is everything that the Rebbe is saying here. The Rebbe explained many, many times. Now, the Rebbe is speaking in designated times. This is not common practice. Okay, this is a practice that you do every so often. When you realize the neshama is not catching on to the body, you need to bust it up. And he's telling you all the methods, the tools, and the vehicles to how to do it. But this is not common practice. Normally, a person should not say, "Oh, I'm no good at this," and that doesn't work. That's no good. A person should sometimes, he says, Ayin Shamarichas, look in the Zohar. So he says like this, the more a person will meditate in all these things Alter Rebbe spoke in Perek Test. The Gambiyune B'Svarim, and look into Svarim about it. For his heart to become broken within him, for real. And it'll be despicable in his own eyes. Kakos, like the pasuk says, with the ultimate disgustingness, and to despise his life. But this process, he breaks and embarrasses the Sitra Achra. He makes it disgusting. And it lowers it to the ground. And through this process, you lower the power of evil that it held itself in might, the gases rucha, the gavaisa, and its haughtiness. Shemagbia atzma al kedushas nefesh. And what does it do? It makes itself big. Evil, we learned already. Al Rebbe is saying here, evil is not great. Evil, like Al Rebbe is going to say, it's darkness, it's non-existent entity. It makes, in Yiddish, there's an expression, he makes a commotion of himself. He has a nothing, another. He makes a tumult, a commotion about himself. He's not really great. Evil is darkness. Darkness is the absence of light. It's not an entity. Darkness, generally speaking, is the absence of light. But darkness is very powerful because darkness makes itself powerful because it's evil. And therefore, what happens? The evil makes itself big. So now you're coming and you're busting it. You're taking this big hot air balloon that's all blown up, massive, blocking the whole door. And you're going to take a little needle and prick it a little bit. And what happens? The whole balloon becomes nothing, this size. All that hot air got lost. What did you do? You busted it. You busted. That's what a person needs to do to evil. This piece of wood that's too thick, and therefore the neshama is not catching on to the body, that thick block of wood is evil. When you break it, and he says all the methods how to break it, it's a very powerful piece of wood. Evil is very powerful of the person. The nefesh habamis, the Yetzer Hara, is very powerful. Society is very powerful. Everything is very powerful. The Rebbe says advice how to get rid of it. So when you lower yourself, what happens? The haughtiness of the evil that's blocking the godliness, the thickness of the wood that's blocking the godliness becomes nothing, becomes garnished. And then automatically the light of the neshama comes into the body. But the Rebbe also says, the Rebbe is adding, he's not done yet with this whole concept. The Rebbe is adding another thing, what you need to do. You sometimes have to take your nefesh habamis, Yetzer Hara, and yell and scream at it. He says, the gam, yarim olel b'kol rash v'regis. In English, he says, you must also thunder against it with a strong and raging voice to humble it, to lower it. Kamaim and Azali, the Gemara says, la'elam yargiz Yetzer Teva Yetzer Hara. Chachamim say you should always scream. The good Yetzer Teva should scream at the Yetzer Hara. Shenemer says Rigzu. It says you should scream at it. Baal Techton. And then the pasuk says no, you won't sin. I know, what does it mean? Lirgeis on nefesh habamis, to scream at the nefesh habamis, which is the Yetzer Hara, the kol rash, with a loud voice, the reges in anger b'machshafte, to tell him, Atorah, you are bad, v'rasha, you're wicked, you are meshukit, you're abominable, you are mesur losam, menuvel, despicable, k'chol Hashem shekor lachachamenu zal, and all the names, the terrible names that the Chachamim gave the Yetzer Hara. You have to scream at them and say, you bum what you are. You're a worthless piece of garbage. You're despicable. You're disgusting. And he says, because how can you deny the fact that God's all over the place? It sounds hard. It is. But the point over here is, you need to realize if godliness is not catching on to you. There are chassidim of the Rabbeim that didn't eat any food of pleasure You know why? They said, because if I do that, how could I understand the godly mimer, the discourse of the Rebbe? The Rebbe is revealing godliness in the world. How in the world would my mind grasp it if my mind is full of coarseness?
What level is this?
Chassidim of the Rebbe Rashab, Chassidim of the Rebbe Marash, Mittel Rebbe. I don't know how many Chassidim today do that, but we got other issues to worry about. But this is, they didn't, why? Because they realized, how can I be enjoying Gashmias if that's not going to let me take Ruchnius? And that's what the Alter Rebbe is saying over here. Okay, everybody have a good week, a good Shabbos. Monday night, 8:30. Parsha.
Yeah.
Next Wednesday, Halacha.